Hello, YouTube pipers. Double O Pipe here. I have my favorite pipe, the Big's favorite. My mind just goes blank. That's what happens when you get old. And it's full of Carter Hall, as usual. Let me open this window. I forgot to do that. There you go. It's supposed to have rained for the last 3 days, but we just had a little bit of rain at night these last few nights, and the days have been sunny. So we've been okay. No flooding. Thank the Lord. My beverage. I wanted to come on and talk about my son and I. He was about 11, and I tried to do things with him that I thought he would enjoy and remember. So I'd asked him one day, would he like to go deep sea fishing? They're boats that you can get on board and go deep sea fishing over here in the harbor. He looked really excited and said, yeah, I'd really like to do that. So I got us tickets on board one of those little fishing boats. About a week before, and he was all excited. I think it was a Saturday, and that morning I went in there and shook him and said, wake up, you got to get up if we're going to go deep sea fishing. He said, do I have to? I really don't want to get up. Excuse me. I said, well, you wanted to go deep sea fishing. We got to get over to the marina. That boat leaves about sunrise. He said, how about just let me sleep a little bit longer? I said, no, son, you got to get up. I'm going to go in there and fix us some breakfast. Well, he threw his legs over the side of the bed, looked at me like, why in the world would you want to do this? I knew he'd be okay once we got out there, so I went and fixed some eggs and toast, and he came out to the table. I said, hurry up and eat your breakfast. You can't go out there fishing on an empty stomach. You got to have something in your stomach, so eat what's on your plate. And he looked up at me and he said, you know, I think I heard we're supposed to have Dramamine before we go on a trip like this so we don't get seasick. And I looked at him and I said, seasick? Pfft, we're not going to get seasick. Jeepers. I said, I slept through a hurricane out in the middle of the Atlantic back in '66. And I also worked one day on one of these boats that we're going on. I said, I never got sick. I said, only wussies get sick. I said, I laughed when those people went downstairs just green and throwing up. I'd walk down there with the sandwich I had in my hand and say, would you like a bite? And they would run to the sides. And I just laughed and laughed. I said, it's You're not going to get seasick. It's in our blood. Your granddad was in the Royal Navy for 7 years. We have seawater in our blood. He looked at me. He said, "You sure we don't need Dramamine?" I said, "No, we don't need Dramamine. Come on, hurry up. We need to get out to the car and get ready and go." We got all the things that we needed, piled them in the back. It was a cold morning, and my car wouldn't start right away, so didn't like cold weather. Well, it finally cranked up, and we backed out of the driveway and took off down the road. And as we were approaching the light, my son said, "Why don't you pull over here, Dad, to the Piggly Wiggly and let me run in and I'll get us some Dramamine." I went, "Pfft," and I just looked at him, shook my head, and kept driving. Well, we got to the marina. The sun still hadn't come up. Got out of the car and I picked up the chest that we had with drinks in it. And he picked up the bag with the sandwiches we had made for lunch. And I said, "Let's go on." He said, "Well, let me carry that and you can carry this." I said, "You sure you want to do that? It's heavy." He said, "Yeah, I want to do that." So he was leaning like this, holding on to it, struggling. He was 11. He, he was a man. I just tossed the bag of sandwiches up in the air as we walked up to the boat. And he said, "You know, Dad, we should have gotten that Dramamine. And I bet these people got patches behind their ears, you know, those ones you put on." I said, "Will you quit talking about Dramamine? We are not going to have a problem. I'm telling you, we have seawater in our veins. Your granddaddy gave it to us." I said, "And I've never been seasick a day in my life." He looked at me. He still had that look of doubt. I said, "Come on, let's go on aboard the boat here." So we got aboard the boat, got settled in our seats, got our chest and everything put away in a safe place. You could smell in Charleston, there's pluff mud, and it has a certain smell to it. And that was mingled with the salt in the air, and it's home is the only way you can describe that. Most people from out of state or somewhere else, that would just be a stink to them. But those from Charleston, it's home. Anyway, he cranked up that big old Evinrude that was on that thing, and it started chugging and shifted that thing into gear, and we started moving away from the dock. Got further out and went past the seawalls that enclosed that little harbor like. Got into the river, the Ashley River, and he pointed it east, and we headed to the sun. And the sun was beginning to come up over the Atlantic there, and the sky was painted pink and purple and began to lighten up even more. And we passed the jetties, and after passing the jetties, because they calmed the water down, it began to be a little choppy compared to where we had been. And the captain's voice came over the radio. And he said, well, we're in the Atlantic now, and we're going to go out for a couple of miles and get to where the bed of fish is, and we'll throw our lines over. Now, it's going to be a little choppy out here. The weatherman said that we might have a little problem with choppiness, so I hope everybody took their Dramamine. My son looked at me, and I looked back and I went, pfft. Well, it took us about a little over an hour to get out there to the spot that they were going. And the guy came over and gave us our lines and showed us how to bait the hooks. They were pretty big hooks. We got them baited, and oh, I forgot to mention that we went downstairs and they had coffee and pastries. And Derek got 2 cups of coffee and like 3 pastries. I picked up a cup of coffee and a pastry. And we munched on that as we came back up and sat in before we got to the place out there. So we were sitting there, kind of full, feeling good. And the captain came back on the radio and said, I just got word that it might be a little more choppy out here than we had anticipated. So I'm asking you all to stay in your seats and put your life preservers on, just to be on the safe side. Coast Guard wants you in such waters to have your floaters on. And that's what we need to do, because we don't want to get in trouble with the Coast Guard. One of the helpers came over and, like I say, showed us how to bait the hooks. There were several hooks on one line, heavy line. We didn't have a rod and reel type thing. We just dropped a line over the side. I said, how you feel, son? And he said, I feel pretty good. I think I got a bite on my line here. And I kind of raised my hand. I said, my son's got a fish on the line, I think. So the guy came over. Said, pull him up real slow now. You don't want to lose him. So my son pulled him up slow, and the guy saw it was a pretty big fish, so he reached over and held onto the line for him and said, that's a nice size one, son, and you're the first one to catch one. So he took it off the hook, put it in a bucket that he had brought over, and gave my son back his line. We baited that hook and threw it back over. Well, I had gotten my sea legs, and I stood up, and I realized that I wasn't as steady as I thought I was with my sea legs, that I was weaving back and forth a little more than I thought I should be. And all of a sudden, there was a wall of water right next to us there, blocked out the sun. And then the boat rose so that wall of water sank down. And I looked over the side, and we were on the mountain, and the valley was way down there. And my stomach was not with me. It was somewhere up there or down there. But all of a sudden, as we went into another valley, and another wall of water rose up to our side there. As soon as that wall went down and the valley we started sinking into the valley, I leaned my head over and I just started throwing up. I was green. Everything that I had eaten that morning just kept spewing out of my mouth and into the sea. And I looked over at my son, and he was as green as anyone has ever been in his life. And all of a sudden, he opened his mouth threw his head over the rail, and all that he had had that morning just flew out of his mouth. And he moaned and groaned, and I moaned and groaned. Well, I got so involved in my seasickness and throwing everything. I got the dry heaves and everything. And finally, when nothing else was coming out, I looked over to see where my son was, and he was sitting over there. And I just went over beside him and said, I just got to lay down. I want to die. I don't want to go anywhere else. I just want to die. And he said, we should have gotten that Dramamine, Dad. I said, leave me alone. Well, a young person always recuperates a lot faster than an old fart. And after about 30 minutes, he started brightening up and got a smile on his face and went back over to his line. And I was still laying there green. just, I just wanted to die. I've never felt that awful in all my life. Never knew what seasickness was until that day. And boy, I just wanted to die. He looked over at me, said it again. We should have gotten that Dramamine, Dad. I said, leave me alone. Well, he pulled in several more fish, all pretty good size. And after the 4-hour trip, because it was 4 hours, we were out there and I was just laying on my back wanting to die. But he was fine. Once he got over it, he was fine. And he was catching fish right and left. Got us a massive fish for the night. Smile on his face. He was just having a great time. Oh, I'll never forget how happy that boy looked. I don't know how much my agony added to his happiness after I had been telling him all that stuff all morning. But that boat cranked up its engine and turned back and headed toward the harbor. The boat sort of straightened out so it wasn't quite as choppy. It was leveling out as it passed through the water. And I slowly got better, but I wasn't better until my feet got back on the dock. Boy, and he had his fish on ice in that thing we had brought the drinks in. And we took it to the car and loaded it up in the car. And he said, next time we'll get Dramamine, won't we, Dad? I said, never be another next time for me. Never. I was glad to see he enjoyed it so much, though. And I was shocked at what happened to me after my telling him all that stuff in the morning. Yeah. That was quite the adventure for both of us. I kind of learned to keep my mouth shut. And he learned that he could get over that and enjoy himself. So it was a trip worthwhile. Never been back, never want to go back. I don't think he's ever been back either. I don't know that he's ever even thought of it. But I don't know. I was just thinking about that today. Wanted to share a pipe, share a beverage, and share a story. It's a beautiful Sunday out there. I hope everybody's weekend has been good and you've been able to do what you wanted to do, if you've been here the entire thing, I appreciate you staying with me and sharing the smoke with him. But for now, I'll say thank you, God bless you, and take care of yourselves till the next time. Bye-bye.